What if I tell you that you could become a data scientist with a non-STEM background, with absolutely zero programming skills, and even with the imposter syndrome lingering in your head along the way? Would you like to know how? In a world where almost every data science leader has a technical PhD or two, I'm unusual, I'm an anomaly, and this is my journey of transitioning from psychology to data science. More than 10 years ago, I graduated from college with a bachelor in psychology. At that time, I was quite sure that I would want to stay in academia. So I continued to pursue a PhD in child development because I'm always fascinated about parenting and how children grow. Starting from my junior years, I got exposed to lots of longitudinal data, which tracks the growth curve of children. So to analyze this longitudinal data, my existing math knowledge turned out to be insufficient. So I needed to learn more sophisticated statistical and data modeling methods. Therefore, I took lots of math and stats classes, which are super challenging, but at the same time super interesting. Through solving those math problems, I gradually realized my passion in working with numbers, data, and programming. And then on the psychology side, I found myself having a hard time comprehending the psychological and philosophical theories. So this is a big hurdle because with my analysis results, I wasn't able to fish out appropriate theories to support and interpret them. This kind of convinced me that I was made for something different. I wanted to get a data-related job, and this is where the idea of switching my major to statistics came along. So I took the plunge and got into a statistics master's program. I still remember the first few days of school. I was so excited to get to know my classmates, like where they came from, what their backgrounds are. Then I learned that the majority of them have a background of math, physics, or engineering, the traditional STEM majors. And literally no one was from social science. We did have a few with an economics background, but no typical social science like psychology, education, and so on. This was the first time I experienced the imposter syndrome, where I feel like I don't fit in. I have a math and stats foundation because of the classes I took back in my psychology years, but I felt like that was minimum as compared to what they have learned with a math major. Plus, I seriously had no idea what coding is. So in psychology, I wrote code once in a while in SAS, but that was to the minimum amount by just calling a few readily available functions. So proper programming was like a completely new animal to me. At that time, my self-doubt crept in and I started to question my decision. Perhaps my parents were right. It's extremely hard to start all over, especially when your peers appear to be so ahead of you already. I wasn't proud of my own educational background to the point that I wanted to hide the fact that I came from psychology. So this imposter syndrome has haunted me for a long time, and even after I got my first data science job. Even with this self-limiting thought, I decided to keep going and see what's going to happen because there's no going back already. So I studied very hard the first couple of semesters. Whenever I didn't have classes, I would likely either study in the library or clarifying questions in my professor's office hours. To catch up on programming quickly, I found coding projects to work on outside of my regular classes. So I'm a morning person in general, but during that time, it almost became my routine to stay up late and code past midnight. It was truly a dark time in my life. When I got done with an analytics project, it was so fulfilling and exciting, and although the learning curve was extremely steep, I felt glad that I stuck with statistics and didn't quit the second time. Luckily, all my hard work paid off. Upon my graduation, I was lucky that I got an internship opportunity at a large pharmaceutical company as a data analyst, where I worked on clinical trial projects and building analytics tools to streamline the exploratory data analysis. Walking into this position, I believed that I was equipped with the technical skills required for this job, so this must be my showtime. Boy, I was wrong again because everyone around me is so technically talented and there's a lot for me to learn in this industry. Again, as a hardworking person, I was committed to the task at hand and never let anything get in my way. I tried to go above and beyond what most people would do in order to complete my project successfully. Also, I grabbed every possible opportunity to learn from the senior analysts, like learn how the pharmaceutical business works and how to work with FDA and different methods to analyze the data. And now, looking back, I'm not sure if this attitude came from my genuine passion about the job or if it came from me wanting to prove myself, to show people that I'm capable technically, even with a psychology background. But anyway, working as an intern, I built a clinical trial data analysis application and got hired as a full-time analyst right away when my internship ended. So my working scope was pretty much the same. After a few projects, things were getting less scary and more comfortable or easy. And at that time, I knew that meant my growth was slowing down. Back in those years, data scientist was a super buzzword, and I thought to myself, now I have good technical skills and I have working experience in the industry, so maybe I should try a data scientist role and maybe I can shine as a proper scientist. So I applied for pretty much all the big name companies you can think of, but I didn't get any offer. Lots of frustration going on back then. My daily life was like a roller coaster, you know. You get so excited when seeing a job post that sounds like it's made for you, but get so disappointed when you don't hear anything back after submitting your application. That was me at that time. Finally, I had to admit that although my skill set was sufficient for an analyst role, I wasn't qualified for a real data scientist yet. So I tried various ways to figure out what the gap was and how I could continue learning. I reached out to experts who were levels above me to ask for their advice, and also lots of Googling and researching. So the gap turned out to be machine learning knowledge and problem-solving skills. So I knew these were the two things I should prioritize, but how? It was then I stumbled into Kaggle and started my first Kaggle competition. Kaggle was and still is my favorite place to study machine learning, to practice my coding skill, and to learn from the best experts across the world. So I was so excited and having fun fussing around and gradually built up my machine learning knowledge along with problem-solving skills by working on different real-world projects. Participating in and self-learning Kaggle on the side, I felt like things were getting interesting again. So I do have a video talking about how to make the best use of Kaggle. If you haven't watched that one, I will leave the link down below. A couple of years after my first analyst job, I came across a job posting for a data scientist at an insurance company. It was one of the biggest healthcare insurance companies nationwide. So I applied and went through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews and I got the job. So finally, a real data scientist job. Now, I could probably stop here as this video is all about my journey of transitioning from psychology to data science. But I also want to share a little bit of experience from my junior years. So I want to offer you a tip that has helped me climb the ladder, and that is keep practicing. How I did it? By volunteering to take on more projects. So in my first project, I volunteered to work with a group of talented data scientists and engineers to build a classifier identifying claims fraud. That was a typical binary classification problem, similar to a Kaggle competition, but with a few different variables. After a few rounds of back and forth discussions with the senior leadership, we finally reached the stage where we were ready to present our analysis findings to the C-suite. Guess what? I volunteered volunteered again as a member of the presenters group. It was not easy, I had to say, especially for a new employee like me, but without exaggeration, that was probably the best opportunity ever to practice my communication skills. So fast forward, when our data team wanted to launch a dashboard, I volunteered. When someone had to do a data science roadshow, I volunteered. And when we wanted to present our work at a conferences, I volunteered. Now, if I would summarize 3 most key components from my own story, that would be: first, continuous self-learning played a big role, especially in getting into the field. In almost all my roles and projects, I had to learn on my own, outside of my job scope, to be barely qualified. This opened up increasingly challenging opportunities. So if you don't find a data scientist position fresh off the school, start with an analyst and level up your skills. And then second, as for the mentality, imposter syndrome is rather common among data scientists, and it's absolutely okay if you feel it as well, especially when you are surrounded by a bunch of talented peers. So just keep doing what you are passionate about and practice to build your own confidence. And then third, volunteer to take on work or projects and to deliver values. With this, it concludes this video about my own data science journey, and I hope that you find this video helpful and inspiring. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So until next time, bye guys!